Hello everyone, this is Hans Laats of Ambertree. In one of my previous videos I talked about the advantages of using tags instead of folders to structure your knowledge base, and not just for organizing information and improving findability, but also for handling things like visibility and accessibility. But perhaps you're limited by your technology, or you still want to have an explicit structure, and if so, you should consider using a radial structure. This does require more thought beforehand to set up, but it can prevent a lot of the issues that we discussed in the other video. Now, to summarize, a tree structure is ultimately a hierarchical structure of folders or boxes with different branching paths based on a certain logic. And just like with an actual tree, it's very difficult to change the structure once it's put in place. And it becomes very difficult to move branches and objects around, and you're constantly dealing with the issue of information duplication and information ownership. Now, a radial structure is built on a different philosophy. While a tree structure is usually created around a certain context like organizational structure or services or geography or a combination thereof, a radial structure is built around the intended user of the information. And it's also a layered structure, so like an onion, or in this case, a cake. So documentation in this structure is placed into different layers depending on the intended user of that documentation. And outer layers tend to have more general, customer-oriented information, could be public as well. And inner layers, inner layers are more for the company itself, and the deeper you go into the layers, the more specific and technical it tends to become, the more it is for your internal organization. Now, one thing to avoid is adding too many layers to this structure and making team-specific layers. If you do this, you quickly risk it becoming a tree structure again, and if you can't manage the visibility and access to sensitive information like security information using tags, then you could add another layer, a deeper layer for this information. So on top of your IT layer, you could have a security layer, for example. But this should really be should be an exception. Also, a radial structure like this really works best in combination with document tagging. So if your technology or your circumstances don't allow for tagging, then you might need to consider the cost that comes with using a tree structure against the investment of adopting a technology and a way of working that allows for a radial structure. So that was a quick overview of the advantages of using a radial structure, and of the advantages of using a radial structure over a tree structure for your knowledge base. If you would like to talk about how you could practically set this up in your organization, or you say, okay, this is interesting, how can we make the transformation from a tree structure to a radial structure, then you can always send me a message on LinkedIn, and also you can go to our website, ambertree.consulting, and there you can book a free meeting, and then we can talk about your situation. Until then, I hope you have a very productive day, and see you soon.